The air in courtroom 3B of the County Superior Court was always thick with tension, but today it felt particularly suffocating. Judge Arthur Blackwood, a man whose stern demeanor was as unyielding as the oak bench before him, surveyed the proceedings with an air of detached authority. His reputation preceded him, a stickler for rules, a man who believed in the absolute sanctity of the courtroom, and one who had little patience for anything he perceived as a challenge to his dominion. Before him stood Sergeant Major Thomas Mac McMillan, United States Marine Corps, retired. Mac was a man forged in the crucible of combat, his face a mosaic of lines etched by sun, wind, and the weight of unimaginable burdens. He stood tall, even in his civilian clothes, a simple, well-worn suit, his posture still carrying the rigid discipline of decades in uniform. He was a man who had faced down enemy fire, but the labyrinthine bureaucracy of local government was proving to be a surprisingly formidable foe. Sergeant Major McMillan, Judge Blackwood intoned, his voice devoid of warmth. You are here today to address citation number 734B for parking in a restricted zone. Yes, Your Honor, Mac replied, his voice a gravelly rumble, accustomed to being heard over the din of battle. As I've attempted to explain to the clerk, there was a system error. Ty tried to remit payment on 3 separate occasions. Blackwood waved a dismissive hand. That is not the court's concern. The citation was issued. You failed to appear on the initial date, and now you are here. Do you plead guilty or not guilty? Not guilty, Your Honor. I believe the citation is invalid due to the payment system malfunction, Mac stated calmly. A small sigh of exasperation escaped Blackwood. Mr. McMillan, this is a parking violation, not a matter of national security. Let's not waste the court's time with fanciful excuses. His gaze then drifted to Mac's lapel, lingering on the Medal of Honor. A flicker of something, annoyance, perhaps disdain, crossed the judge's face. And what is that, Mr. McMillan? Blackwood asked, his voice suddenly sharper, pointing a manicured finger at the medal. Mac looked down at the medal, then back at the judge. This, Your Honor, is the Medal of Honor. I see, Blackwood said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. A hush fell over the courtroom. The few spectators, mostly other citizens, awaiting their own minor infractions, exchanged shocked glances. To order a veteran, especially one wearing the Medal of Honor, to remove it, was an unprecedented act of disrespect. Max stood motionless, his eyes, usually so calm, now held a flicker of something dangerous. Blackwood's face flushed crimson. "Are you defying a direct order from this court, Mr. Macmillan?" he thundered, slamming his gavel. "Contempt of court. I will not tolerate insubordination in my courtroom. Remove that medal, or I will hold you in contempt and have you removed by the bailiffs." The bailiffs, two burly men who had served under Blackwood for years, shifted uncomfortably. They knew Mac's reputation, not just as a Medal of Honor recipient, but as a man who had earned the respect of every veteran in the county. They hesitated, their eyes darting between the furious judge and the stoic veteran. "Your Honor," Mac stated, his voice now resonating with a quiet power that filled the room. "I understand your authority in this courtroom. But there are some things that transcend even that authority. This medal represents every man and woman who has ever worn a uniform, who has ever bled for this country. To remove it would be to dishonor their sacrifice, and that I will not do." Blackwood, his face contorted with rage, slammed his gavel again. "Bailiffs, remove this man. Hold him in contempt. I'll teach you about defiance, Mr. Macmillan." The bailiffs reluctantly approached Mac, but before they could lay a hand on him, a voice from the back of the courtroom cut through the tension. "Your Honor, with all due respect, you are making a grave error." All heads turned. Standing in the back row was a distinguished-looking man in a perfectly tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed. It was General Maxwell Max Sterling, a highly decorated Marine Corps general, still active duty, and a personal friend of Mac's. He had been a silent observer, having heard about Mac's parking ticket predicament and deciding to offer moral support. He had not anticipated this. Blackwood, momentarily stunned by the interruption, glared. "Who are you, sir? You are out of order." "I am General Maxwell Sterling, United States Marine Corps," Sterling stated, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight of authority. "And I am here to inform you, Judge Blackwood, that you are attempting to desecrate a sacred symbol of this nation. The Medal of Honor is not a trinket. It is a symbol of extraordinary heroism bestowed by the President himself and protected by federal law." Blackwood scoffed. "Federal law? This is a county court, General, and I am the judge here." "Indeed, you are, Your Honor," Sterling replied, his voice growing colder. "And as a judge, you should be aware of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 704, which makes it a federal offense to wear unauthorized military medals, but also implicitly protects the dignity of those who legitimately wear them. More importantly, you are violating a fundamental principle of respect for those who have served and sacrificed for this nation." He then pulled out his phone, a secure military device. "I am placing a call right now to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and then to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They will be informed that a sitting judge has ordered a Medal of Honor recipient to remove his award in open court. Under threat of contempt, I assure you, Judge, this will not be taken lightly." Blackwood's face, which had been red with anger, now drained of all color. The mention of the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest echelons of the U.S. military, sent a chill down his spine. He was a small-town judge, accustomed to wielding power over minor infractions, not facing the wrath of the Pentagon. "General," Sterling Blackwood stammered, his voice suddenly weak. I was merely trying to maintain decorum. Sterling's voice was like ice. "You call disrespecting a national hero, a man who faced down unimaginable horrors so you could sit safely on that bench, decorum. You have shamed yourself, your honor, and you have shamed this court." He then turned to Mac. "Sergeant Major, are you all right?" "I'm fine, General," Mac replied, a faint, grim smile touching his lips. Sterling nodded, then turned back to Blackwood. "I suggest, Judge, that you immediately dismiss this spurious parking ticket. Issue a public apology to Sergeant Major McMillan, and then reflect deeply on your conduct. Because I promise you, this incident will not be forgotten, not by the military, not by the veteran community, and certainly not by the American people." Blackwood sat slumped on his bench, his gavel lying forgotten. His authority, which had seemed so absolute moments ago, had evaporated. The courtroom, once filled with his booming voice, was now silent, save for the quiet, respectful murmurs of the spectators. "Case dismissed," Blackwood finally managed to croak, his voice barely audible. "Sergeant Major McMillan, I apologize. My deepest apologies. I was out of line." Mac simply nodded, his gaze unwavering. He didn't need the apology. He had made his stand. General Sterling then approached the bench, his voice low but firm. "Judge, your actions today were not just an insult to Sergeant Major McMillan, K-word, an insult to every man and woman who has ever served this nation. You have demonstrated a profound lack of understanding, a shocking level of disrespect, and a disturbing arrogance that is unfit for any position of public trust, let alone a judicial one." He then turned and walked out of the courtroom, Mac following closely behind him, leaving Judge Blackwood alone on his bench, his career already in tatters. The story, fueled by General Sterling's immediate calls to Washington and the rapid spread of information within the veteran community, exploded. Within hours, it was trending on social media. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. "Judge orders Medal of Honor recipient to remove medal," the headline screamed, often accompanied by a photo of a stoic Mac and a furious Blackwood. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. Calls for Judge Blackwood's resignation flooded his office. Veteran organizations, military advocacy groups, and ordinary citizens expressed outrage. Petitions were launched, demanding his removal from the bench. The state's Judicial Conduct Commission launched an emergency investigation. General Sterling provided a damning affidavit, detailing Blackwood's arrogant and disrespectful conduct. Other veterans came forward, sharing stories of Blackwood's past dismissive behavior towards them in court. Judge Arthur Blackwood, once a seemingly unassailable figure in his local jurisdiction, found his world crumbling. His phone rang incessantly with calls from reporters, angry constituents, and increasingly, his superiors. His carefully constructed image of an impartial, disciplined judge shattered into a million pieces. He tried to issue a public apology, a carefully worded statement crafted by his lawyers, but it was too little, too late. The damage was done. The image of him ordering a Medal of Honor recipient to remove his award was seared into the public consciousness. Within a week, facing immense pressure and the threat of impeachment, Judge Arthur Blackwood resigned from the bench. His career, built on years of legal practice and judicial appointments, ended not with a bang, but with the whimper of a man undone by his own arrogance and prejudice. He became a pariah, his name synonymous with disrespect and judicial overreach. His law practice, what little remained, dried up. He was ostracized, his reputation irrevocably destroyed. For Mack, the incident was a brief, unwelcome foray back into the spotlight. He gave a few interviews, always humble, always emphasizing the importance of respecting service and sacrifice. He used the platform, not to gloat, but to advocate for better understanding between the civilian and military communities, and for greater support for veterans. One afternoon, a few months after the incident, Mack was volunteering at a local Veterans Outreach Center, helping a young Marine struggling with PTSD. He looked up to see General Sterling standing in the doorway, a warm smile on his face. "Sergeant Major," Sterling said, extending a hand. "Heard you're still fighting the good fight." "Always, General," Mack replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Just a different kind of battlefield now." Sterling nodded. "Indeed, and you're still winning. That judge, he's gone. His career is over. And it's because of you, Mack. Because you stood your ground. Because you refused to let him disrespect what that medal represents." Mack looked down at the Medal of Honor, still pinned to his lapel, still shining brightly. "It wasn't about me, General. It was about all of them. The ones who can't speak for themselves. The ones who made the ultimate sacrifice." Sterling clapped him on the shoulder. "That's why you're a legend, Mack. That's why you always will be." The story of Judge Blackwood and Sergeant Major McMillan became a powerful lesson, not just for the legal community, but for society as a whole. It was a stark reminder that respect is earned, not demanded, and that true authority comes not from a position of power, but from integrity and humility. It taught that the symbols of sacrifice, like the Medal of Honor, carry a weight far beyond their material value, koa, and that to disrespect them is to disrespect the very fabric of a nation. And for Judge Arthur Blackwood, the silence of his empty courtroom, the absence of his gavel's thunder, was a constant, bitter reminder of the day he ordered a legend to take off his medal, and what happened next ended his career. He had learned too late that some battles are fought not with legal arguments, but with moral courage, and that some men like Sergeant Major Thomas Mack McMillan carry an honor that no judge, no court, no power can ever diminish. His legacy was not in the cases he presided over, but in the single, defining moment where his arrogance met an unyielding force of integrity and was utterly destroyed.